I actually don't even know how to start this video. If you follow me on Instagram, I posted, when was it, 2 weeks ago now, that I had a surgery done, and I didn't really go into detail because I figured I would just sit down and film a YouTube video, kind of go over everything, do a little update on my health, my fertility, all of that kind of stuff, and our plans, etc. If you are curious to know, then I guess keep watching. It is currently August 1st when I'm filming this, and I woke up this morning with a beautiful breeze, a chilly breeze, which, to be honest, made me excited. I have been loving summer so far. This is the first summer in a very long time where I was like excited for summer. I was excited for the warmer weather. I was excited for all the summer activities. Normally I'm a fall girl to the end, but I was just in a place over the winter where I was just longing for summer. And so far I've had an amazing summer, and I know it's not finished yet, but there is a bit of a chilly breeze and it is getting me a little excited for the fall time, I'm not gonna lie. You know, if you've been following me for a while, how I feel about fall. Anyways, I'm in kind of a cheeky mood. So essentially, I had my septum removed in my uterus, to answer the question of what I got done. Now, for the story time, I think I mentioned, I don't know if it was a YouTube video or a podcast episode, I forget where I talk about things, to be honest, because I feel like on the podcast I go into like more in depth. I don't know, I feel more comfortable there. I had a septate uterus. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it. It's not bicornuate, it's septate. I basically had 2 canals in my uterus with a septum that went down the middle. It happened when I was being developed in my mom's womb. It is genetic, my mom has it, whatever. So I didn't know I had that, and when I got pregnant with my first son and I went to my first ultrasound and they thought I had a bicornuate uterus, which is a different thing, and they just put me on moderate bed rest and basically explained to me that with that kind of shaped uterus, I have a higher chance of miscarriage, probably will not go to term. I went to 41+1, had to get induced, so anyways, throughout my whole like fertility journey, I did before I went through with IVF, they did that test on me where they inject the liquid into my uterus and my fallopian tubes to see if the tubes are clogged, to see the shape of the uterus, and by that they were actually able to see very clearly that it was a septate and not a bicornuate. So a bicornuate is like the literal shape of your uterus is like a heart, versus this is like a normal shape of a uterus. Bicornuate is like the lining, like it literally just, this is the shape. Septate is like the membrane that goes down the middle, like that membrane, this is how you start in the womb, and then the membrane goes like this as you're developing. Mine never went like this, so it never fused together. So the membrane is actually removable, versus bicornuate, it's not removable. They said to me, listen, doing things in the uterus can create more harm than good. We do not recommend removing a septate unless you've had like multiple miscarriages and can't get pregnant, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Having a septate does not impact fertility, but it does impact when you are pregnant. Can't have twins, like there's just a bunch of things that come with it. And so when the IVF transfer didn't work, I said, I want to investigate further before I go ahead with our other transfers, because we do have 2 other embryos frozen. And I said, before I pay to get that done, I want to investigate further. So they sent me for an MRI, which came back, surprise, surprise, as a septate uterus. Very clear. And then I went to see a specialist, which our fertility doctor had sent us to. And he basically, like, his specialty is the uterus. This is what he specializes in. He's a surgeon, and he was going to perform, I forget the name of it, but they go in to your cervix and look around your uterus with a camera. It's like a colonoscopy basically, but of the uterus. So when I went in for my appointment, I thought that's what we were doing. I thought we were literally just going into the camera. I think they were gonna check for like polyps, fibroids, just the lining. They were gonna check on the cesarean scar on the inside and just see what's going on. So when I showed up and I was in triage, he came in and he was just like, so we're gonna administer an IV. If you feel like you need to have any medication for the pain, we will do that for you. And I was like, is it gonna be really painful to just go in with a camera? He's like, well, no, when we remove the septate, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're removing the septate? And he was like, well, that's why I'm here. This is my job. And I was like, okay, wait, I'm confused because I thought I was just doing the camera. I was told by my fertility clinic and the doctor that to remove the septate, it can create more harm than good. Like, I was basically just explaining everything that the fertility doctor had told me. And he said, listen, I turn away a lot of women when they want to remove the septate. He goes, but it's case by case. He goes, in your situation, I will actually leave the decision up to you. I'm not going to highly recommend it because I don't think it's absolutely necessary to remove it, but I do look at your file and I'm realizing that, you know, it could be beneficial. And he goes, and I've removed enough to make sure that I could do it in a safe way, that I don't really create scar tissue, and we'll do it really, really well. Also, he gave me the option of, we can go in with the camera first, and depending on what we see and what you feel, you can make the decision then. And I was like, okay, good, because I want to try to go with like no medication. He basically just told me he didn't want me to make a decision when I was under like whatever the medication is that they give me that makes me all loopy and not feel pain. He wanted me to make a decision when I was sober. So I said, okay, well, I don't want the medication if I don't need it. So let's go into the camera, see what's going on, look around, and then, you know, it's not as invasive, and if we decide to remove it, we'll make the decision then. And I said, does it impact my fertility? And he said, no. Goes, in this case, really the septate is more like when you are pregnant, and like, yeah, the embryo could, like, if it does attach to the septate, it doesn't get as much blood flow, so yeah, you could have a miscarriage. He goes, but like, it does not impact you getting pregnant. So removing the septate makes no difference. It doesn't worsen your fertility and it doesn't make it better, but what it can do is that when you do get pregnant in the future, it will make things a lot smoother for you in that situation. And I was like, okay, well, let's just go in and see what's up. So we go, he freezes my cervix. If you're squeamish, by the way, with like talk about blood and anything surgery wise, just a little warning, I'm gonna go into detail, okay? So he went in and it was so cool. First of all, he told Dan at first, he was like, you probably aren't gonna be comfortable being in the room. You can wait outside. And Daniel was like, why? He goes, well, a lot of men faint during this. Dan was like, what? He goes, yeah, you'd be surprised the amount of men that faint. Dan's like, I'll sit behind her, I'll watch the screen, but like, I don't think I'll faint. Anyways, so we're looking at the screen as he's like going in me. And honestly, this is so cool to me. Like, I found this was really interesting. When he got to my cervix, he was like, he went in and he's like, look, instead of there being a hole of like the cervix, there was 2 little holes because the septate goes all the way down to my cervix. And it looked so big, like it was thick. And so I already knew my uterus had like 2 cavities, and Archie was born, like he was growing on the left, and that's why I always felt like he was on my left side, and he stretched out the septate. But then when he was born, it just went back to normal. So I was like, whoa, that's so crazy that like, I literally have 2 cavities. So first he went up on the left side. So he went up on my right side first, and he's like looking around. He's like, okay, everything is like super good. The lining is great. He goes, oh, you have 1 polyp here. I'll just, you know, I can remove that before, you know, if we decide to do anything. And then I said, what is a polyp? And he was like, oh. He explained it to me, but he was like, honestly, it's not, you have 1. It's really not anything to think of. You can Google what that is. And then he looked at my cesarean scar. He's like, okay, not too bad. It's like fine, there's not much scar tissue. He's like, but on the sides, I do notice a few little holes in your lining, which if fluid gets in during a transfer, it could make it harder for you to get pregnant. But like, realistically, that's not gonna make much of a difference when it comes to doing a embryo transfer or fertility in general. He's like, it's just, I can't fix that because going in, it's like a really hard job for something that's not even gonna really make much of a difference. Like, they're so tiny, these like, there was like 4 on both sides. They looked huge on the camera, but the camera was so small. It was actually so cool. If you've ever had an intervaginal ultrasound, it kind of looked like this long thing, and on the end was just like a tiny little camera. I didn't feel anything because he had frozen my cervix, so at this point, like I literally felt nothing. And then he was trying to go into my left side. He's like, oh, it's a little tighter here. Maybe I don't even need to go in. I was like, no, I want to see what's going on. That was the side my son was born. They couldn't put the embryo in that side. What's going on? So he finally, like, he just pushed through and he looked and he was like, everything's literally completely normal. He's like, your septate is, it's not huge, but it's not super small. He goes, I could definitely remove it. This would be a very easy removal for me. I've done like much worse ones before. And he said, so let me know what you think. And so Dan and I spoke about it, and obviously, you know the answer. We decided to go ahead with it, which was so crazy because I like really was not expecting that day. I was expecting to go in and to get like a few polyps removed because I had a feeling, I don't know, it's like maybe I have polyps. I've heard so much about it, or fibroids or whatever, which I have no fibroids or anything like that. And so this is the part that was so cool to me. He had this like long, it was like a long stick with tiny little scissors at the end. And then at the end of it was a little trigger like this, so that when he put it in me, he could control the scissors from here and snip. And so again, graphic, I'm gonna tell you. But what he said was, okay, let me know if you want any pain meds. I'm gonna start snipping and you can let me know. And so he started cutting, and it was cool. We were watching it all on TV with like squirt water and cut, and on this, there was this huge screen, and there wasn't much blood because of the water, I guess. And you would see like, literally, it was like white flesh being cut. But it was so interesting to me, like how he was doing it. And as he was getting closer to the top, it felt like contractions. Like it felt like I was in labor, but not to the point where I was like screaming in pain. I was still able to talk, whatever. I was like, yeah, it's crampy. It's definitely like a contraction, but like I could talk through this. I don't think I need the pain meds. He's like, okay, I'm gonna do the bottom now, because he did the top. He's like, the bottom might hurt a little bit more. So he starts, I'm like, okay, yeah, definitely a bit more painful. And then as he's getting to the top, he was like, listen, this part is gonna be painful. Like, I'm just letting you know, like this is what everyone tells me. And so then I got scared. I was like, no, okay, just give me the meds. And so they administered, and like literally within seconds, I was like so happy, felt nothing, very loopy, loving life. Honestly, I feel like that drug just makes you forget of every single worry in the entire world. I was just really high and happy. So yeah, he removed the rest. And what he did was he kept like the shape of the top because it was a little concave. So he made sure like that was good. And then he was like, okay, like look at now when we like go in with the camera again, what your uterus looks like. And he went, and it was just like one hole, and it was just a normal uterus cavity. And I'm thinking, that is so wild how small both sides were, and now how big the uterus is. Like obviously I know uterus is not huge, and it looks way bigger on the screen, but compared to the two small sides, I'm thinking, how does this not impact fertility? He's like, you know, there's just no studies to suggest that. I mean, he did say like it does help women in a lot of cases get pregnant after they get their septate removed, but it's not like concrete enough to be like, yes, the septate creates infertility at all. But he explained to me it might be like a bunch of little factors that make it harder, because unexplained infertility is a real diagnosis. But to me, I'm like, I don't like that it's unexplained. There has to be a reason. Like it just does not make sense to me. Like I need it to make sense in my brain. And even if I never get concrete answers, at least now I've literally, if I do get pregnant, or knock wood, when I do get pregnant in the future, I will make it a lot easier for that pregnancy. I won't be high risk when it comes to a septate. My body now can carry twins. If I ever got pregnant with twins, I could try for VBAC, which I know many women do vaginal deliveries with a septate, or they even do VBACs. Like my mom had a VBAC. She had a cesarean with me, and then a VBAC with my sister, and she had a septate uterus. I know it's possible, but this really ups my chances if I did decide to go that way. I mean, in the end, who knows what I decide to do in the future, but I don't know, I just felt really confident with the decision. I felt really happy. The doctor was so nice. He just was very knowledgeable, let me ask a million questions, and had the patience to just sit there and answer them. It was funny. He was like making jokes with Dan, and you know, Dan was not, he wasn't grossed out at all, by the way. He didn't faint or anything. There was a few times where he was like, ooh, I'm not gonna look at that, but not to the point where he was like feeling sick. The one gross thing that he said, and again, I'm gonna talk about something gross here, But he said like underneath my butt, like, okay, you know, you have your like legs up in the stirrups there, with, like the light flashing on you, but underneath on the floor and underneath my butt was basically like a massive plastic sheet where all of the gunk would just fall out. So like blood, liquids, and then when he was cutting out the stuff, like the polyp and the septate, he just like flopped it onto this thing. And then so he just like closed it up and threw it in the garbage can with like a Starbucks drink in there. So Dad was like, ew, that's like literal human bits in this garbage that's just going into the garbage can. Like, that's disgusting. And I was thinking, like, I don't know if that's legit what happens afterwards, but when Dan told me that after, I was like, oh, that is kind of gross. But yeah, that was really like the only gross thing that I found. Everything else I was so fascinated by. I was like, that is so cool. And he said for the healing, so basically for the healing process, and I know every doctor does it different, every place does it differently. I am not looking for advice or anything, and this is already passed now, so anything you say can't change what we already did. So I'm just warning you now that, like, if anyone comments like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, or you should have did, like, it doesn't, it's done. So I'm just warning you. What he did was he did put a balloon inside of me, and I know not everyone does this, but he said in his experience, he's been doing this for like decades, that it's the best healing results when he administers the balloon. So it's basically a small piece of latex which he put up inside of my cervix and then injected it with water. So it's basically a water balloon in my uterus, and that is to help when the uterus is trying to close after the surgery. It stays in this shape so it doesn't create as much scar tissue. And then he put me on a estrogen pill to help with the healing process and the clotting blood, to help clot the blood and prevent any scar tissue from forming. And then I go back in a few weeks to like check everything out, which I have yet to do. But I have to say the most painful part of the whole process was the balloon. Like the days after, I refused to just take Tylenol. I literally went to the pharmacy and I was like, what can I take that can help with pain? Like, I'm pretty good when it comes to pain. And this was constant contractions. Like, once the drug wore off, that he had administered with me, I was like on my way to my parents' house with Daniel. I was like, oh, I'm feeling like period cramps. Interesting. I guess it's normal. Like, the drugs are wearing off, to the point where I was like, I'm having contractions. I feel like I'm in labor. And Daniel looks at me and goes, Alex, you are having contractions. Your uterus is literally contracting on that thing, on that balloon. But it wasn't contractions that came in waves. It was constant. And they had just told me like, oh, take Advil and Tylenol, like whatever. I was like, I don't think I can, I was in so much pain. Like, I was crying and I was moving. I was like literally bawling my eyes out. I was like, this is so uncomfortable. I go to the pharmacy to like buy all the pads and stuff I need, because like you bleed a lot after for like, can go up to 10 days. It's basically like after giving birth, at least for me, like with the cesarean and everything. So when I went to the pharmacist to get my estrogen pill and the antibiotic, I was like, I need a painkiller. Like, this is so painful. And I was crying, and he was like, listen, we can give you something that has this product in it. It's not like a full-blown painkiller that you'll get prescribed by a doctor, but it's something that like we can give you over the counter that is a lot stronger than Advil and Tylenol, but it does make you drowsy, so please do not drive or anything like that, whatever. So I took that pill, instantly felt better. Like within 30 minutes, I felt good. I was like, okay, I could take one of these painkillers every 6 hours if I need to. And for the next few days, I had to take them because it was just like extremely painful. And what was so gross was the fact that I had these like drains coming out of my cervix, like literally out of my vagina, taped to my fupa. Like, I had the drain draining out the blood. And then there was this other tube, which I wish I could like show the photo, because it's hard to explain, but I would literally just be showing a picture of my vagina. So the other one is to suck out the liquid after the 7 days, because I had to keep it in for a week. So yeah, there was constant blood like coming out, leaking on my pad, but also coming out through the drain. So it was going up, and like it stained so many of my underwears. I was so frustrated, but at the same time I was like, you know what, this was a good decision. I'm glad that I did this. I just wasn't expecting, I don't know, I'm dumb. Like, it's a surgery. It's not like I have surgeries often. I had a cesarean. I know what happens with surgeries. It's to take it easy. So I took the week to just really, really relax, be chill. Didn't do much, honestly. I barely left the house. I really just wanted to make sure that I healed properly, especially within that first week. You can't have any sex or play with any sex toys. You can't take any baths or go in any swimming pools. No douches. You can't do any exercise, like physical activity, other than just walking. So I really took it easy and made sure that I was like fully healed. And then essentially we don't have to go in to get the balloon out. We basically just took the syringe and sucked out the liquid after a week, and it came right out. And then after that, I just wore a panty liner for a few days. And it was basically like, you know, at the end of your period when it's like basically like brown blood, like it's not fresh blood. It was like that for like a week and a little bit after we took out the balloon. But the only thing is, about a week, so about the time where I took out the balloon, I stopped the antibiotics because they were finished, and I just continued with the estrogen pills because it was supposed to be for a month. But they did tell me that it can create blood clots, so if I notice any kind of symptoms in my leg, to just go to the emergency room, stop taking them, whatever. So I started noticing in my left calf, it was like really like a cramp, almost like a Charlie horse. I'm like, okay, well, it's not red, it's not hot, but like that is uncomfortable. I do have a hip injury right now currently from whatever, so maybe it's my sciatica. I was like overthinking everything, but I kept taking the pill, and then it just kept getting worse, the pain, and I'm like, okay, what if this is a blood clot? I'm like, am I being crazy right now? And then there was like a rash that developed on my leg, and I'm thinking, a blood clot is not something I want to ignore, because that can turn into something extremely dangerous if it travels to your lungs, to your heart, to your brain. Like, you can have a stroke. So I was at my parents' house one night, and I was kind of panicking. And if you are like this, you will understand when you start Googling and you start going through all the worst case scenarios and the what if this and what if that, and you just spiral. And I was panicking, and I'm like, I need to go to emergency room. Like I for sure have a blood clot. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. And my parents are like, Alex, if you go to the emergency room, you're going to wait 17 hours. Like, especially for something like this that you're not even sure of, you're going to wait so long. Just call your doctor and see if you can get an appointment with him. So I called, he called me back right away, and he's like, okay, yeah, come in first thing tomorrow morning. For now, just stop taking the pill and we'll check it out. So I went in the next morning, he did a bunch of tests. He like looked at it, felt a bunch of places on my body. I don't know what he was doing. He was making me like do different things with my legs, looking at them, whatever. And then he said, okay, we're gonna do some blood work. We're gonna just make sure, whatever. He basically explained to me they're looking for an infection in my blood, and also this protein that gets released when there is a blood clot. And they would do a rush on the results to get the results the next day. Because he said that if it does come back as like a specific result, then he's gonna send me for an ultrasound on my leg. So I'm like panicking. I'm like, great. I make this decision, and now I have a blood clot, and like I was just freaking out. And anyways, long story short, the results came back, no infection in my blood, but the, like, I guess the protein or whatever the levels were not, it wasn't nothing. Like, my bloods weren't clear. So he said it wasn't high enough to the point where it was like emergency, send me to the hospital for an ultrasound, but it wasn't low. So he's like, for now, just stay off this medication. It's not mandatory. It's basically like the medication does help clot your blood so that when it's healing inside your uterus, it just makes it better, but you also don't want to get a blood clot. So stay off of it for now, keep your leg elevated, don't work out, whatever. And so I stayed off of it for an entire week, kept my leg elevated, stayed off the medication, and within a few days the pain went away and like everything's back to normal now. So I just haven't gone back on it because I'm like kind of scared to do it. And the surgeon had told me like it's not necessary, it's just preventative to help with the scarring. So I hope when I go back for my like follow-up, everything's gonna be okay. But he did say if there was any kind of scar tissue that was left over, he would remove it and kind of just go from there. So far that is what has happened. Now on to like fertility. Dan and I, we were supposed to call the fertility doctor once all this was done to schedule our next transfer. But Dan and I have actually talked about it a lot, and we've decided to hold off on transferring another embryo right now. I was really in my head in 2022 and even a little bit at the beginning of 2023. And I am in such a good place now mentally when it comes to my overall health, well-being, future, like goals, aspirations. I feel like I was caught up in the I'm a mom and that is my identity now, and all I know to be is a mom, as most mothers fall into that quite easily when they do become moms. So I felt like I was failing my partner. I felt like I was failing, like my body was failing itself. I just didn't understand anything, and I was feeling a lot of pressure internally to, like, I was like, I have this timeline that, like, as I age, my fertility goes down, and, you know, like, I'm gonna have such a big age gap with my kids, and like, I was just feeling all this pressure instead of really just recognizing how lucky I am in my life currently. I have this beautiful boy, which I love more than anything in the entire world. Our life is quite easy right now. Like, having one child, it's not the easiest thing in the world, trust me. Adding another kid to that obviously makes things harder. And right now we're loving our life. So I'm like, maybe right this second, I'm not in a place where I'm 100% ready to just switch it. I also have things coming out in the next few months, which I've been working on like for a year, that I'm very excited for, that not that I don't want to be pregnant for, but it would make it a lot harder if I was pregnant. And there is like a few trips coming up that I don't want to be pregnant for. So it's kind of that thing that I'm like, obviously getting pregnant would be a huge blessing, and I've gone through all this and spent tons of money on fertility stuff to be able to even get to this point. So I'm not like giving up entirely, like that's not what we're doing. It's just we're holding off on the transfer, and if we get pregnant naturally, then we get pregnant naturally, and like that's such a blessing. I'm also, there's a part of me that is a little scared. I'm like, what if we do the 2 transfers and they're not successful? And our surgeon had said, because he works obviously with the uterus and he works with people with fertility issues all the time, and he said normally people only go to see him once they've had a failed IVF session, meaning not just one transfer, but all of the embryos don't attach. So like the whole IVF process didn't work. And then they go see him before they do the next IVF. But Dan and I were kind of like, oh, we had only planned to do IVF one time. We had 4 embryos. Obviously, if you've been following our story, the first one died in the thawing process. The second one didn't stick. We have these 2 other ones, which are still highly graded, but there's a part of me, I'm like, what if they don't stick? You know, like it's scary. And then you spend all this money and all this time and go through all this. Like, I don't think I'm ready to get there mentally again. I feel like I'm in such a good place now, and I'm just riding this positive wave. But who knows, right? Who knows what the future holds? This is the update as for now, where I am, what's going on in my life. And if anyone out there is struggling with trying to conceive and you're going through it, oh my goodness, so much love out to you. It is so fucking hard. Like, when you want something so bad, whether it's first time infertility, secondary infertility, like, it doesn't matter if you have 5 kids and you want a 6th to complete your family and it's not working. Like, it is so hard to go through this, and you really don't fully understand it until you're in it. Like, I have to say, I was so empathetic with people that, I mean, first of all, I didn't even know what it was until, you know, my son was only a few months old and I was connecting with so many moms. But it is so hard physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually to go through something like this. And I just have so much love to give those of you that are yearning for that positive pregnancy test, because it is fucking tough. But if this brings you any kind of comfort, I was panicking because I'm like, you know, I just turned 33, I'm getting so old. And the surgeon looked at me and he literally giggled and he was like, that is still considered young. I'm like, doesn't it go down at like 32? He's like, realistically, like, it goes down a lot more when you're 37, like, generally. Obviously people have different fertility issues like throughout their whole life, but like my cousin had her first baby at the age of 40, my aunt had her baby in her 40s, my mom's best friend had her baby in her 40s. Like, it happens all the time. And now with all like the medication and treatment available to us, there is option. And so he was like, girl, you do not need to stress, like, you have time. And that just helped me a lot. Like, it helped me feel a lot better, because I don't know, there was just a part of me that I was like, oh, I passed 32, I'm going down. I don't know why. I don't know why that number stuck in my head or why I focused so much on that number. It's so weird, because I got pregnant when I was 29. So I was like, well, maybe it's just been harder for me ever since I turned 30. Like, you just spiral. Anyways, all that to say, things are finally, I'm in a good place. I'm healed, I'm doing good. Lots of exciting things coming that I cannot wait to share with you. Projects that I've been working for. I just feel very grateful in my life right now. And I am not just a mom, like I am a mom, I'm proud to be a mom, I love being a mom, I'm grateful to be a mom, but it's not the only thing that I am. And I'm finally, over the past few months, realizing that and feeling my old self come back and feeling healthy, feeling strong, feeling all the love that I felt for myself postpartum that went away when I was struggling to conceive at the beginning of our journey. It is all coming back to me now, where I am like very much in love with my body again, in not a like superficial like physical way. It's like my body is bringing me life. You know, I can fill my lungs with this amazing air and I'm living and my heart is beating and I have friends and family that I love and who love me, and I'm very blessed for this life. So that is essentially it. And I will obviously update you as things go on, and just a thank you in advance for being so caring and nice and respectful for Dan and I throughout our journey. Like, I know one day Arky will have a sibling in one way or another. I just don't know when that timing is, but I'm trusting the process and know that in due time, it will be our time. And in due time, it will be your time if you are on that journey as well. And I love you, and I will talk to you all in my next vlog, which will be coming out shortly because I have been vlogging. Love you, bye.